welcome to A Plus Wrestling here on this beautiful Sunday. NFL Week 1, the first batch of games just ended, and we're here to talk all things wrestling, including AEW All Out. We've got some news, we've got the state of the union, or the state of NXT it should be, and so much more here on this episode of A Plus Wrestling. I'm your host, Boris, and this week joining me for the entire episode is none other than my compadre, Matt Ederer. Matt, how's it going?
It's going very well. Bonjour to all out there. Yeah, man, the holiest of all days, the first football Sunday. It's been a wacky one, but we're here to talk wrestling. It was also a wacky one on AEW last night. I think you'd probably say the most violent pay-per-view that AEW's ever done. Arguably, the most violent mainstream wrestling pay-per-view of all time. I don't think ECW got this gritty, this insane as AEW did last night.
I don't know, that's an interesting point. I think ECW was a little more violent, but again, right? Like we have to remember ECW was when, especially like you and I, we were like pre-teens, teens watching ECW, right? It was a whole different mindset, whole different world too when it comes to headshots and other things. So we'll talk about that a little later when we talk about AEW All Out. But Matt, before we get things going, how's everything? How's everything in the world of Matt?
Oh, it's pretty good, man. I've been reconnecting with some old friends this summer, which is really, really nice. My friend Sarah, who I used to chill with all the time, possibly smoke a little marijuana, and just like a good old friend from the university days. I hadn't seen her in 10 years, and we reconnected this summer. So that's been really, really cool. Doing stand-up again, Boris, getting out there, telling some jokes. There's an open mic tonight at Teddy Beer, which is a local bar here in Toronto. It just opened up. It's a pretty cool little place. I might go check that out. That appears to be every Sunday. Open mic at Teddy Beer, homie.
There you go. Very cool, man. Yeah, things are going well. It's been a very busy weekend, very fun weekend. Kind of doing my own thing again, like you, reconnecting with people. You know, it's always good having some time, getting back time to be able to do that. But enough of that. I guess it's time that we should start talking about wrestling. And Matt, like we usually do, like I used to do, it's time for the news of the week. And we're going to be handling things a little different here. We're going to pick 3 to 5 stories and we're going to talk about them. We're going to have discussions because in this show here on A Plus Wrestling, it's all about opinions. It's all about what you think because wrestling is so subjective. We might as well get some various voices. But with the pay-per-view last night, it's going to be me and you covering things. All right, the first thing I wanted to talk about was this Vince McMahon Netflix documentary. So earlier in the week, Netflix released a trailer for their Vince McMahon docuseries. It's going to be 6 one-hour episodes, and it seems like it's going to be all about the scandals, WWE, and his family. The series is described as Mr. McMahon chronicles the rise and fall of Vince McMahon, controversial business and co-founder of WWE, from his transformation of the WWE from a small regional business into a global entertainment powerhouse to the explosive sexual misconduct allegations that led to his eventual resignation. This 6-episode series offers a deep dive into McMahon's life and his enduring franchise, culled over from 200 episodes, 200 hours of interviews with McMahon himself prior to his resignation, his family members, business associates, and some of the most iconic names in wrestling history, as well as the journalists who covered McMahon's allegations. Filmmaker Chris Smith, best known for Tiger King, and executive producer Bill Simmons, 30 for 30, present an unflinching, no-holds-barred look at one of the most enigmatic figures in sports entertainment. You watched the trailer to this McMahon documentary. What are your thoughts on it?
Seems like it's going to be pretty well done. It seems like it's going to be an honest look at his legacy. We shall see. They did interview Hulk Hogan. They interviewed a couple, I don't know, I guess you'd say yes men or whatever, Vince McMahon fans. We'll see how it all plays out. But it seems like they're not shying away from the controversies, the horrible things that he's done in his life, which is really all you can ask for. So I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic. It's tough to say without seeing it. But the 1 minute that we saw in that trailer was pretty encouraging, I thought.
I thought so too, right? You're right. Like they did interview a lot of yes men, but it's a trailer. I think people need to remember that this is just a trailer. It'll be very interesting because from the trailer you didn't see if they interviewed any women, any people that were really close to McMahon and things like that. But with Bill Simmons behind it, you know that this isn't going to be some fluff piece. You know that at least I feel like it's going to be a little bit real reporting.
Yeah, well, Bill Simmons, the guy who made Tiger King, I believe, right? So yep. I think he's good for getting into the nitty gritty, getting behind the scenes and into the minds of some absolutely insane people. So let's hope he did it again.
All right, so that is the Mr. McMahon documentary coming out later this month on Netflix. The last thing I want to talk about this is, do you find it interesting that this could not look good for WWE as a company, right? As a publicly held company. Do you find it interesting that Netflix is releasing this just months before their deal with WWE starts?
I know what you're saying, but I feel like that's the whole point of this, is to pin it all on Vince McMahon, to say this was the old me. Vince McMahon is gone. WWE is nothing like this anymore. It was all the fault of this old man, and make him kind of the fall guy. And honestly, Vince McMahon controlled that ship. He was a micromanager. Most, if not all of it, does fall on him. But yeah, I think it's like a purposeful decision to distance themselves from Vince. They're going to pin it all on him kind of thing, you know?
Exactly. That's exactly what I thought. All right, so let's talk about WWE. This past Friday had their final episode of SmackDown on Fox. What do you think? What did you think of their 5-year run on Fox? Do you think it was a success? Do you think that it gave new eyes to WWE? Or do you kind of think that it was just like just 5 years of whatever?
I mean, it wasn't whatever. It was a success. It did get a few new eyes on WWE. I don't think it did either side like gangbusters business, but it didn't hurt. It certainly didn't hurt. Got WWE a little more mainstream attention. You started to see things like football players and wrestlers co-mingling, wrestlers kind of showing up at various sports events and on Fox programming. So I think it was a mild success overall, right? Like, you didn't set the world on fire, Boris, but it was okay. It didn't hurt.
And let's also remember, right, the pandemic happened in the middle of this deal. So a lot of things went topsy-turvy, but overall I think it was good, right? It's Fox. You're not going to go wrong with being on Fox, regardless of whether you're making money or you're losing money, right? It's Fox. So I think just that, based on that alone, it's a success. What I'm curious about, not that it matters in the grand scheme of stuff, is how the ratings are going to change now that they are back on USA as opposed to Fox.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of a dip, but at the same time, I don't know. TV ratings, though they're important, matter maybe a little less than usual, as long as they have a certain base, which I feel like is not going anywhere, Boris. I think they're going to be fine,
Exactly. All right. This Monday, WWE Raw is in Calgary. Dramatic pause. Alberta, Canada. And Bret Hart is going to be on it. I just want him to do a hard 15 on why Goldberg sucks. On why Bill Goldberg sucks.
That'd be interesting. I don't think we've ever seen Bret talk about that before. It'll be cool to see Bret at Raw. I'm sure he and Punk will do something. I hope he doesn't take a Claymore kick from Drew McIntyre, but some kind of shenanigans might be afoot here from Bret the Hitman Hart, and I'm sure CM Punk.
Apparently, they're planning to have him have a segment or some interaction with Gunther.
With Gunther, I like it. Gunther, in many ways, is the heel Bret Hart. It's kind of like if Bret Hart and Vader had a baby and raised him in Germany. It's
right.
I like it. I like Gunther versus Bret Hart.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. So that's happening on Monday. WWE is also apparently in talks with several of their superstars to extend contracts. Cedric Alexander just extended. Shayna Baszler just extended. We're going to be seeing a lot more names getting those extensions. Matt, Nothing but good stuff here, and this is the reason why I wanted to bring this up, is because, people love to shit on AEW so much, but let's remember, if it wasn't for AEW, the bags would not be showing up for some of these extensions. So yeah, some thoughts there.
Yeah, no, I think the industry seems very healthy right now overall. It's really cool that hundreds and hundreds of wrestlers can make their living on the main stage on a major company, worldwide conglomerate that WWE is, and AEW, which is a very successful startup that pays wrestlers pretty well, especially if you're Mercedes Moné or Kazuchika Okada or Ricochet, who just signed there too, right? So it's really cool. The industry is healthy, Boris.
That's exactly it. And again, this is why, like, you can shit on the product, you can shit on the day-to-day, you can shit on Tony Khan, but without AEW, there's so much that wouldn't be happening right now in the industry. People wouldn't be getting paid well. And let's face it, WWE, I think, would be better, but they wouldn't be as good as they are right now if they didn't have the competition that they did.
You're 100% right. Just the loss of Vince McMahon and the new era, WWE would be way better than it has been. But AEW, that competition gives it that extra punch, man. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. Tony Khan has done the wrestling business a lot of good. It's silly to just shit on Tony Khan. Now, let's talk All Out 2024 and shit on Tony Khan.
And that's what we're going to be for sure. That's the perfect segue. We are going to be doing that a little bit later. We're going to be talking about AEW All Out because it was a very controversial night on the Facebook group for A Plus Productions. There was a thread, and we're always going to be having threads for shows, and we're going to be getting your opinion each and every single Sunday. So we're going to be reading from the Facebook group. Before we go and talk about the state of NXT with Steve Swift, I wanted to quickly talk about the AEW Media deal. I'm tired of talking about this. I'm tired of hearing about this, but it seems like we're inching closer and closer and closer to finally getting that realization of what that new media deal is for AEW.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I'm tired of waiting because we've been hearing about this story for 8 months to a year, if not more. Like, when's it coming? What's it going to be? It's been kind of in the back of everyone's mind. I'm excited to meet the end of Wrestling Bros and the Cornette cult just going AEW's never made a dime, Blair, like trying to insinuate that because Tony Khan has, quote, never made a dime in the wrestling business, that AEW is somehow bad. Once they sign this deal, it's even more ridiculous to make that argument, and hopefully that stuff goes away. So for that reason alone, I am monitoring this closely. But yeah, mostly I don't care. Like we said, it's very clear the wrestling business is as healthy as it's ever been, and this is more evidence of that. They're about to sign a huge deal. If not, they've already signed a huge deal with TNT TBS.
Exactly. Time Warner Discover. Here's the thing.
Yes, sir.
I think that get this deal done. Get this deal sealed and delivered and faxed or whatever it is you have to do to make it legally binding. And I think this is a major step where now Tony Khan can focus on the product, right? Let's be honest. Not everything is perfect right now in AEW. And I still feel like there needs to be a little more attention, a little more TLC, tender loving care on the product itself. And I think that once this deal is done, he can focus a little bit more on that.
That makes sense. I mean, he obviously is spreading it very thin. Tony Khan is. He's got a lot of different things going on, and eventually something falls by the wayside, man. It's just life. He's good at juggling all these balls, but I mean, no perfect human exists. He's going to screw up from time to time, and it is possible. This is just something to worry about for AEW, and it's nearing its end game, hopefully, and that's probably very good. That's an excellent point. I agree with you on the product. It's just so frustrating as an AEW fan because it seems like the issues are so evident and they're so easy to fix, but they just keep kind of happening over and over. At the same time, he is still learning on the job too, man. He's only been in the wrestling business for 5 years. Tony Khan has. I think AEW is largely pretty good. The show last night was largely pretty good with some pretty obvious flaws, and we'll talk about that too. But yeah, I 100% agree with you, man. And it's kind of the way it is. I don't know do you think Tony Khan needs to give a Bryan Danielson more power over the creative proceedings? What do you think is an answer?
I think there needs to be a president of sorts in AEW to kind of take a lot of some of the things away from Tony Khan, where Tony Khan can kind of have this overarching view of everything, but someone else kind of watches over AEW. I think that the same should happen with ROH. I think that he needs to divvy up a few things, and that will really help him. And he has so many smart people around him. I just don't understand. And again, we don't know the ins and the outs. We're not in that locker room. We don't know if this is not already happening, but it just feels like he's not using the talent and experience and brains that he has to its potential.
Yeah, that's true. And also, maybe that guy would have been a William Regal or a CM Punk, and those people have left, like maybe there were people in place who could have done that job. Perhaps at a time it could have even been a Jim Cornette or an Eric Bischoff, but it feels like they've drawn a line in the sand to try to criticize AEW for YouTube clicks, which is obviously a viable business for both of them. But yeah, it's just, I wonder if that may have happened already, if not for some bad luck,
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see what happens there. So much more to talk about. Remember, go to the Facebook group. You can by going to facebook.com, searching for A Plus Productions. That's EH Plus Productions, and we have opinions and threads and chats all the time, and we just pick stuff from there to talk about each and every single Sunday. We'll have a questions, comments thread each and every single week, and that's on the Facebook group. You can even email us. You can find the email, all of our socials, all of that fun stuff on the show notes. All right, Matt, so we are going to be hearing from another member here from the A Plus Productions, A Plus Wrestling crew. That is none other than Steve Swift. He is going to be chatting about the state of NXT. Like I said, here on A Plus Wrestling, we're going to be really opening things up. We're going to be getting different opinions, because that's the beauty about professional wrestling, that it's so opinionated. Everyone has a take, and that's what we love here on A Plus Wrestling. And joining me this week, we're going to be getting a bit of one of those a State of the Union type of addresses about NXT from our resident NXT reviewer. He is none other than Steve Swift. Steve, how's it going? And welcome to A Plus Wrestling.
Welcome to you two. Hello, all of you from across the pond. Getting darker now. I like that State of the Union thing, and to bring it back to the 70s, NXT, the State of the Union, is not good. That's what Jerry Ford said, and that's what I will be saying as well. I'm afraid.
It's interesting, right? Because I know that a lot of people right now seem to be very excited with NXT, and this kind of reminds me of the golden era of NXT, right? Yeah, the pre-AEW era of NXT, where NXT was kind of it was the rival brand in a sense. It was the competition of WWE main TV. And what I mean by that is that it was good matches, it was entertaining TV, but they got away from what NXT is all about, which is development. And I'm seeing that right now. TV is up and down. Pay-per-views have been very good. People seem sports entertained for the most part. We'll talk about the pay-per-view to TV conundrum that we saw, but what I'm seeing a little less of is that development. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe having the main roster stars is helping the NXT stars, but I'm seeing a real focus on that. Steve, what's your take?
I agree entirely in that this has now become another brand to push. It's become another brand to get up there. So it's not well. This is developmental. So just I mean, this is not speed or anything, but let's just be a little bit careful about expecting too much. Now, in the past, you're right. The PLEs have been great, and the PLEs are currently great. Let me add that caveat. I like to caveat if I can. I like a caveat. And
I like caviar also.
I like caviar. Tastes just like fish eggs to me. I can't understand it, but I do like it. Anyway, I like the PLEs, but I think you're right in that they are expecting it to be a brand to stand on its own. It doesn't have those kind of, well, as you say, this is developmental, so we can't really expect an awful lot. No, we're supposed to expect an awful lot. And with the stars that have gone to other brands, I'm not sure they've really created enough stars to slot in, particularly when you consider the one at the top of the face picture, Trick Williams, that I will want to talk to on this little chat we're having very, very much.
Exactly, right? Like, to me, it says something that your biggest star in WWE's developmental brand is TNA's Joe Hendry.
Yeah, absolutely. And as well as that, they had to bring in Ethan Page to say, well, hang on a minute, we need to take the title off you and give it to someone else. That's the way I feel about it. Now, I've been watching wrestling an awful long time. I mean, I've been watching it since probably the early 1800s, the way I feel today. I'm incredibly elderly.
You watched Whippersnapper versus Abraham Lincoln live.
I did, and you know what? Lincoln's feet were on the ropes, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that George Washington allowed that to go. I really couldn't. Anyway, I think that what they've done is they put the belt on Trick, and it looks to me like they've said, it's not looking so good. Maybe they looked at some kind of demographics and thought this is not working as well. They've taken the belt off him, and there is absolutely no sign of them saying, but we'll bring you back with a program to get up there very quickly, Trick. No, what he's doing now is, and this is going to be so embarrassing for the man, what he's doing now is working as a referee and having to go through the Joe Henry dance. So you've got Ethan Page already coming in as an outsider, and they're doing the outsider thing, aren't they? And I thought they were going to do full NWO at one point, but they're doing that. And then they bring in Joe Hendry, who's now the new Trick. So the look on his face when he was having to do the dance with Joe Hendry at the end of that Go Home show for No Mercy. It's so sad. And now, of course, he's mired in the middle of the card, if I remember rightly, last week, in a feud with Pete Dunne. So they're not looking to bring him back with the belt anytime soon. What does that mean for Trick? May I suggest? Boredom.
Yep, that's the issue right there. But And so going back to a point that we were saying, right? You said that this is feeling like just another brand, and I agree wholeheartedly with you. And just remember, right? Like right now, WWE has a lot of pressure with NXT because it's leaving USA Network, going on its own, going to the CW, so it needs to build its own audience. We've already seen they're traveling, for those shows. I believe, what is it? Cody's going to be on one. Oh, no, it's Randy Orton in St. Louis, right?
Oh, yes. Yes.
So that's part of it, right? So I'm going to, like, NXT right now, while it kind of is the developmental brand, it is a third brand of WWE at this point, and we're losing some of that charm of that developmental brand, I feel, on the men's division. Yeah,
on the men's division. Let's talk about the women in a minute because that's a different picture entirely at the top. But the men's division, you're right. And let me just kind of drill down into that. I got a bit of marketing speak in there. Drill down into that because I think that they're a feeder promotion, always have been, but the other side is not. The other circle is not squared. So the other side's not dealt with. So there's no developmental. So they're expecting people to come through and move to Raw or SmackDown, but they're not looking at how that will happen. And you can't do that if you're saying we're just going to buy loads of talent in. That doesn't. I mean, the only person they've got really coming through is probably Javon Evans, and I think they've hothoused him, so the crowd are a bit bored with him, to be honest, it looks like, which is a shame because I think he's probably a big talent for them.
And Obi-Femi, I find. He's the other guy, right?
Obi-Femi. Of course. How could I forget about Obi-Femi? Absolutely. But the thing is that, and they've done this really well, even though Vic was saying nobody's really taken it to him like Tony, Dan. Well, yeah, they have actually, because they brought Otis in. Remember that? And Wesley. And the great thing about Obi-Femi is he does look beatable. So that is not a complete monster. He does look like you could get a chink in the armor and you could beat him on your best night, but it would need to be your best night. His mic skills are not that good, but then We expect that. Andre the Giant wasn't going to do a 20-minute promo and give you loads of long syllable words, but you understood that. So he's a great talent, but they don't have very many on the men's side. Look at Pete Dunne having to come back. Look at Otis having to come in, and they're trying to get that rub, and I don't think that really works. If, as you say, they're all going out on their own, and we need a strong brand. It's a shame.
Yep. It's going to be very interesting to see what the men's division does, because like you said, I think I really want to hit the nail on the head on what you said, that right now they come in, it is developmental, but there's no path in order to develop them into the main roster wrestlers. We could be wrong. We could just be talking out of our ass at this point. We don't know. But there's something to be said when both you and I, who haven't talked about NXT in so long, are saying the exact same things. Listeners, let us know what you think in the comments. Are we talking out of our ass, or are we on something? We're on the NXT men's division. We're a little lost right now. Before we talk about the women's division, we're going to end this on a really positive note, so we're going to leave the women's division to last. I want to talk to you about the partnership with TNA. Has this hindered NXT? Has this helped NXT? Has this helped TNA? Has this hindered TNA? What do you think, Steve?
It helps TNA. Oh, by the way, before we talk about that, if talking out of our asses was an Olympic sport, then we would be representing our respective countries and doing very well in the medal table.
Amen.
I've been practicing. You're going to have to get yourself right up there because I'm very good at it. Now, the thing about the TNA is it helps TNA. Of course, it does. But it doesn't help NXT. It would help NXT if it was done in a different way. If NXT had lots and lots of homegrown talent and they were working with, and you thought it's bursting with talent, and you've got people in NXT who are holding their own with Jordan Grace. Actually, that did happen. More of that in a minute. But if you thought, well, all these people are Joe Hendry, and there's someone who's got just the same amount of charisma as Joe Hendry. He's not having his own way, but they don't have anyone like that. So it's harming NXT because TNA are a smaller brand. They are a smaller brand, and they're looking. So their folks come in. So and Joe Hendry comes in, and he's suddenly the big star. Well, I've been saying recently, when will they sign him? Because they're going to have to do something like that. They've got the money to say, if it triggers a clause in your contract, we'll pay and bring you over. But when they have to do that with a TNA star, it makes NXT look weak as maiden's water. Weak.
Yep. Agreed 100%. That's kind of the issue there, right? But at the same time, it does lead to compelling TV. I was covering TNA for Slam Wrestling last week, and Carmen Petrovich made her appearance, challenged Jordan Grace. We saw Ariana Grace, kind of be the spokesperson, which is perfect considering who the on TV officer of TNA is. It's Santino Marella. So I kind of love those dynamics on TV. It makes for good TV, both sides, but it leaves kind of like the star making and what NXT is supposed to be in a very weird place. All right, let us quickly talk about the NXT women's division, which I think right now might be almost the best. It's up there. It's not the best, but it is a hot division right now. The addition of Julia, that reaction, I never thought she would get the reaction she did at No Mercy and on TV last week, but she's a star facing Chelsea Green this week on NXT TV. Oh, what do you think, Steve?
Well, it's great, and we'll talk about the top of the women's division at the moment. But you have some fantastic talents, like Carmen Petrovich and like Solruka, and there are some duds in there, and they've not handled them correctly, like Fallon Henley. What are you doing with that? And you've got Wendy Chu in there; she's back, and this is strong. But right at the top, you have Roxanne Perez, who has settled into that heel persona beautifully, fantastic, arrogant heel promos. And to be fair to WWE, and I'm not often fair to WWE, they have actually handled her correctly, because she's won PLE and week after week, and she's done it in the ring. 1, 2, 3. clean pins, no nefariousness. That's really important, because then that allows her to look back and say, well, I beat you fair and square. That's so important for an arrogant heel. But she's just doing some of the best work I've seen as far as arrogant heel work at the moment in wrestling. And I watch so much wrestling. I think she settled in beautifully. She leans into it, and they need to put everything around Roxanne Perez. She needs to highlight every PLE and every program.
She's the future of the women's division on the main roster. You may as well make her the focus of the women's division while she's in NXT. I think that her eventual match at the debut of the CW show against Julia is going to be marvelous. I cannot wait for that. Something that I've noticed about the women's division, like, there's a lot of cheesiness in NXT. It still can't get that NXT 2.0 stink off at times, but something I do enjoy, and I hope that they kind of start doing this more on the main roster, and we do see this a little bit on the main roster, but you see this a lot in the women's division, and it's those weird, like, you know, it feels like you're watching a high school drama with the women's division. Like, all the women are talking, and then something happens in the back, and that triggers a huge story. Like, I like that stuff because it reminds me of the Attitude Era, where everyone from the top of the card to the bottom of the card had something to do.
Yeah, and at least there is a little bit of a storyline situation, rather than, hello, I'm walking through the car park and I bumped into somebody. We're going to fight in a minute. Or, as I've said many times, there's a corrugated door over there. Let's fight. So there's I find that very boring. But yes, although sometimes I find the women's locker room a bit frenetic, because every time you go there, it's a horrible, viperous place to be. It's like a really bad workplace. It really does. There's no way I'd last 5 minutes in that kind of environment. I'd be saying, I tender my resignation. This is bullying and harassment. So yeah, it's frenetic, but at least they've got stuff to do. And there are a lot of them. There are actually quite a lot of similar kind of gimmicks in there, yes. Which is why Ariana Grace, she just stands out so well. If I can stop calling her Ariana Grande, it will really help me. But Ariana Grace is a great talent for the future, and they're bringing her on really slowly, I suspect, because they don't know quite what to do with her. But I don't mind that, because I think she'll still be fresh when they finally push the button on her.
If you remember, her storyline with Gigi Dolan abruptly ended because of Gigi Dolan's injury. I don't know how far Gigi Dolan is away from coming back, but I think they're keeping her in the back burner, making sure that people remember who she is. But I think they're going to continue that story with Gigi Dolan whenever she does come back.
Yeah, and that'll work for me, because, she is a very well-defined character, and she seems to enjoy playing that character, just like Roxanne Perez does. We need that. We really need that, particularly because the men's division looks to be incredibly scant at the moment. Yep.
Why do I feel, we're going to play this back after that first CW episode, why do I feel like something is going to happen, and we're going to see the return of Cora Jade interfering in some shape, way, or form in that Roxanne Perez versus Julia match?
Yeah, that would be an enormous situation. So yes, if you're going to want something big, then you might as well have that. But the thing about NXT at the moment, I don't want too many of those. The women's division can take it, but they've done a lot of that with the men's division, which is, Wesley, we'll just turn him heel, because that will spike the metrics. Well, it will this week, but then next week people are going to say, I'm not quite sure about him as a heel, and then you're back down, aren't you? So once you start doing that and say, well, have some quick hits, if they don't work, where else do you go? Well, to TNA, to grab somebody else. Josh Alexander will be next.
I'm shocked we haven't seen Josh Alexander just yet, but I'm sure we'll see him. I'm sure we'll see him, and Ethan Page, the North, start doing something. Steve, talk about all you do here on A Plus Productions and outside of A Plus Productions.
Well, for A Plus, I go back to the future. I do WCCW, World Class Championship Wrestling. I love it. From 1984. It's a really vibrant time. And then I I also review Stampede Wrestling from Canada, 1988, which is not so much of a vibrant time, folks. So they're kind of polar opposites. So I'm really enjoying doing both those. And apart from that, I mean, I have my own podcast, Steve Swift's Rambling Reviews. You can pick it up on YouTube. Why don't you go to YouTube and have a look at that? See my smiling face and listen to my mellifluous tones going up and down and doing funny voices. So yes, I do a lot of wrestling, a lot of films. There'll be a horror film tonight, folks, and music. So have a listen.
Exactly. It's Steve Swift's Ramblin' Review. He reviews it all, including wrestling, music, and so much more. Also, catch him and myself over at slamwrestling.net or our friends at slamwrestling.net. Best place for interviews, opinions, and so much more. Slamwrestling.net. Steve, we're going to have you back real soon on one of these roundtables. But as always, thank you so much, and we'll chat soon.
Goodbye.
I believe in Joe Hendry, cause you love him in London and Paris and Tokyo, America, Scotland and Canada and Mexico. They say I believe in Joe Hendry. I believe in Joe Hendry.
And there you have it. So Matt, so obviously that was a one-on-one with me and Steve. How are you feeling about NXT these days?
Yeah, I'm not watching religiously, but I did watch and enjoy No Mercy. I do try to, because we have it DVR'd, Boris, so I try to maybe at least fast forward through it every week, but I will watch a couple people no matter what they're doing. My girl Roxanne Perez, the female Ricky Steamboat, trying it out as a heel. I feel like she's finding her footing. Love me some Roxanne Perez. Obafemi is the best kept secret in wrestling. I'll go that far. One of the best big men already in wrestling. People have slept on this guy. He's been good since day one, and he's getting even better. He's the next wave of a Goldberg, of a Psycho Sid, that big ass-kicking giant, but he's so athletic. He can talk. Arguably, he's a better promo already than Psycho Sid ever was. God rest Psycho Sid's soul. He got there a couple times with some amazing promos, but, it was a little iffy getting there from time to time. Obafemi is great. NXT has some highlights. The TNA invasion, for me, it doesn't excite me as much as it does some other fans. I think that's why I'm not super into it right now. I'm just kind of picking and choosing.
And do you feel like, with their move to the CW, that there's more of a focus on NXT being a third brand as opposed to developmental?
Yeah, it's feeling a lot like, I think it was 2019, right before the pandemic, when NXT was the third brand with Keith Lee killing people at Survivor Series.
Ooh.
We all remember. Yeah, there was a man once upon a time. We basked in his glory. We did, Boris. His name was Keith Lee. But yeah, man, it feels like they're shooting for that third brand swagger. That CM Punk is coming up on in a couple months now. It's going to be like in a couple weeks, I should say, the move to CW, right? So CM Punk will be on the show, or Randy Orton will be on the show. It's going to be pretty exciting times for NXT.
Exactly. So that is the state of NXT. We're going to be, again, we're going to be bringing people in. We're going to be bringing in guests. We're going to be bringing in some really cool interviews each and every single week. This is the show about wrestling opinions, because wrestling is so subjective. That's what we do here on A+ Wrestling. All right, Matt, let's go to the main event of the show. Let us talk about AEW All Out, which emanated from Chicago, Illinois. And yeah, man, let's run through the results. Let's obviously give our opinions, and at the end, I'm gonna go to the Facebook group, and we're gonna sprinkle some comments from the awesome listeners. How does that sound?
Sounds great, brother. Let's do it.
All right, so we're going to start with 0 Hour. We're just going to talk about the matches. Man, how these guys have been falling down the card to a certain extent. And that's the Acclaimed Anthony Bowens and Max Caster versus the Iron Savages, Bronson and Boulder. Did you watch any of this card?
I watched the first two matches, so I saw this one and the 6-man tag we'll talk about next. Yes, so yeah, I agree with you. The Acclaimed have fallen a little bit. I feel like it was an act that kind of, hit a blossoming point, and then the flower wilted, and now it is dead on the vine, this thing, and it is time to break this team up. I think Anthony Bowens has a really good future ahead of him. He could be easily a TNT champion, maybe even higher up the card. Max Caster feels like he's going to be an incredible mid-card heel. I think it's time for these guys to go their separate ways. The way they booked this match was interesting because Bronson and Boulder beat the crap out of these guys, and the Acclaimed got the win at the end by the skin of their teeth. They even had, I forget which one, if it was Bronson or Boulder, whichever Iron Savage was on the ground, kicked out at 3.1 of the Acclaimed's finisher. So I think they're telling the tale that the Acclaimed's time is almost up. I can see a breakup coming soon.
It was Boulder that kicked out right at the very end. And yeah, it was an interesting match. It went 8 minutes, 10 seconds. The Acclaimed won. Perfectly fine way to start the evening. The second match was Dustin Rhodes, Sammy Guevara, and Hologram versus the premier athletes Tony Nese, Ilya Daivari, and my boy, Josh Woods.
Yes, former number 1 overall pick of Boris in the ROH draft once upon a time. I remember that. Yeah, this match was okay. It was pretty much an average 6-man tag pre-show match, as they say. It is both nice to see Sammy Guevara back and sad to see him in Ring of Honor and on the pre-show of these pay-per-views in forgettable throwaway matches, because there was a time when Sammy was, as they say, a pillar of AEW. There was a time when he was in important matches all over the place, and now he's kind of forgotten. So that's sad, but this is a fine match.
Yep, exactly. It was fine. All the matches from the pre-show were fine. Nothing excellent. It felt a little less important than usual. It just felt like matches for the sake of having matches. That's kind of how I felt about this pre-show. So Dustin Rhodes, Sammy Guevara, Hologram, they end up winning. The next match was Juice Robinson, Austin Gunn, and Colton Gunn versus the Dark Order's Evil Uno, Alex Reynolds, and John Silver. This match went just under 7 minutes with Juice Robinson, Austin Gunn, and Colton Gunn getting the W.
It's weird to see these guys as baby faces, the Bang Bang Gang, but Juice Robinson is hilarious and likable. I would have never in a million years expected Austin and Colton to be baby faces for a long time, but here we are.
Something that made me go in this match was just seeing John Silver, where he was so over at a certain point in AEW's history, and now he just feels like anyone else on the roster. It's really interesting, and I say that because it was the Chicago crowd.
That's true. Chicago is, usually a very smart crowd. I'm sure once upon a time they were leading in cheering for this man and making him exactly what he was. And he seemed like an internet darling and poised to break out. And then it never quite happened for John Silver. Yeah, that's a great call. And I wonder if it's even possible for him to get it back.
That's exactly it. I'm worried about that, and I don't think he will. Kind of like the Acclaimed. Something major needs to happen to their gimmicks, to their presentation, to their characters, to themselves. I don't know, for them to kind of reconnect with the crowd.
Yeah, I think you're totally right there. A change is in order for all three of those guys.
Yep. All right. And the last match from 0 Hour was Dante Martin, Darius Martin, and Action Andretti with Layla Gray versus Shane Taylor, Lee Moriarty, the Beast Mortos versus Roderick Strong, Matt Taven, and Mike Bennett in a 3-way trios match, a 9-hombre gauntlet, as I'm going to call it.
What a battle, I'm sure it was. Yeah, 3-way, 6. So a 9-man tag. Yeah, and I do like the Beast Mortos. The little bit I've seen of the Beast Mortos, he's pretty sick.
Yeah. He's always been awesome. His work in TNA was great. Obviously, his work in Mexico was pretty fun. Roderick Strong, Matt Taven, and Mike Bennett, the Undisputed Kingdom, end up winning this match in about 11 minutes. That was that. Like I said, 0 Hour was just couple matches, couple segments. Here's the thing. 0 Hour, this 0 Hour didn't get me any more or less pumped for the show.
Yeah, I feel you. I watched the first 2 matches and then went to cook a little dinner and do something else and come back to the show later. And then I ended up not watching it at all last night. So it actually put me off the show, but it wasn't like I left in a huff. You know what I mean? It just, I sat down to watch it. My attention went elsewhere. I was like, oh, I'll just watch this later. And I never got back to it. So the pre-show, it did chase away one fan technically.
Yep, there you go. All right, let's jump to the main card. We started AEW All Out 2024 with MJF versus Daniel Garcia.
This match was great. I really enjoyed it. I'll never watch it again because for some reason there was like a lot of like snot flying everywhere and spit flying everywhere, and it was actually gross. It's one of a couple gross matches on this show. So yeah, it was kind of off-putting in that way, but it was a slobber knocker, literally and figuratively. A great wrestling match to open the show.
It was really good. Went about 24 minutes. Garcia drags MJF to the corner. He sets him up for the middle rope pile driver, but MJF bit Garcia, shoved him off the ropes. He talks with the referee. He's selling his neck. Garcia approached the corner, talking to the referee. MJF pushes the ref, hits Garcia with the low blow, hits and uses a jackknife pin for the 3 count. So here's the thing that I liked about this match. It really showed how good Garcia is. The ending was kind of typical MJF, but I don't think this hurt Garcia in any shape or form in the long term.
No, yeah, it fits MJF's character well. It's kind of exactly what I thought we were going to get. The match was a little better. I'm grateful for that. This was a great wrestling match. The ending, yeah, a little cheesy, a little typical, a little WWE, you could say, but that's MJF's thing. He's the heel. He cheated to win. I'm sure he'll brag about it and say that he defeated Daniel Garcia fairly and whatever, and we will get some kind of maybe singles or maybe submission match, maybe some kind of street fight or something, which Garcia will win, I'm sure.
It'll be interesting because there are rumors that MJF is taking a bit of a break right now along with Sir Strickland, so we'll see. We'll see if if this continues or what, like on Wednesday. Garcia looks to the corner. So after the match, MJF offers Garcia a handshake. Garcia accepts the handshake while the fans are kind of all booing. MJF raises his hand, tries to kick him. Garcia blocks the kick, and he drilled MJF with a kick in the gonads. Garcia crawled over. He hits him with a pile driver from the ropes, crawled over to MJF, sat him up, kisses MJF's forehead, and then just leaves the ring.
I haven't heard the term gonads in a minute. That was fun. Indeed, in the gonads, he was kicked. Yeah, so MJF defeats Daniel Garcia by a low blow and a roll-up, and then Daniel Garcia returns the favor of the low blow after. I thought this was a great match, man. 4 Sammy Sosas out of 5, at least, here in Chicago.
That was awesome. The next match was the Young Bucks, Matthew Jackson and Nicholas Jackson versus Claudio Castagnoli and Wheeler Yuta for the AEW Tag Team titles.
Good match. The Young Bucks are excellent wrestlers. They can do it on autopilot. The problem is they have been doing it on autopilot. It's still very good, but almost everyone is bored with the Young Bucks. All my homies are sick of the Young Bucks. Boris, you know what I mean? Like, we've seen it. We've seen the heel authority gimmick. We've seen them in the ring. And like, I don't know if their change of character was really an evolution. It kind of felt like a step backwards just being tag team Vince McMahon, you know? Like, I don't know.
Yep. This was good, but not memorable, right? And I think at this point in my notes, I wrote something along the lines of, I'm not going to open the file, but something along the lines of couple days of setup really hurt this match. And the 2-week setup kind of hurt this pay-per-view. Like, I kind of didn't feel emotionally involved with most of the matches, at least until the last 2 matches.
Yeah, last year, All Out 2023 is one of my favorite wrestling shows I've ever seen. I actually really love that. It was the week after, and it was for the sickos, but in a different way. That was more of like the love letter to wrestling, like all these long, crazy matches. That was the show that gave us the Miro versus Powerhouse Hobbs meet match where everyone was chanting meat. It was just like a party, and it was like the after party of wrestling. It was like when you're getting drunk and having extra fun at 3 a.m. This show is for the sickos in terms of like the people who love violence and depravity. You know what I mean? And that's what this show will stand out for. And the Young Bucks just kind of had a match on it. So yeah, not really memorable at all. It was okay. Like 3.5 Stan Makitas out of 5. What do you think?
I would give it 3 max in my opinion, but that's just me. All right.
Fair.
The next match, probably the match of the night for me, Will Ospreay versus Pac for the AEW International Championship. I really enjoyed this. Loved the crowd was just hot. right from the get-go, standing and cheering as soon as the bell rang, and it was exactly what you thought this match would be.
Yeah, a game of anything you can do, I can do better between Will Ospreay and Pac. This was an awesome match, just absolutely great. Kind of reminded you of those old Adrian Neville versus Sami Zayn matches from NXT a lifetime and a half ago. But yeah, I would say for sure this was a classic, all-timer, absolute banger, and the best match on the show for sure.
Yep. This was a really fun match, kind of getting the teases of the Ricochet Will Ospreay feud match, whatever it's going to end up being. I kind of like that. Ospreay sets up for a move. Pac counters into a Frankensteiner for a near fall. Ospreay stood up after the Frankensteiner, hits a Styles Clash. Ospreay and then hits the Hidden Blade, gets the win. Will Ospreay retains the belt. After the match, Shivani calls the match an all-timer, and we see Ricochet kind of just nodding as he's watching backstage.
Yes, I agree with the esteemed Tony Schiavone, all-time classic, no lower than 4.5 out of 5, 90%. Let's go 4.5 Frank Thomas's out of 5. Rest in peace, Chicago White Sox.
Willow Nightingale versus Chris Statlander with Stokely Hathaway in a Chicago street fight was up next.
A great match. One of the best women's matches in AEW history. This was awesome, violent, bloody. This match and this show was so crazy that a woman doing the splits into a pile of thumbtacks was not like the top 3 most violent thing on this show, or maybe even in this match. But yeah, Chris Statlander and Willow Nightingale paid the price, had an amazing Chicago street fight.
That somehow turned into an impromptu chain match.
Yes, yeah, a little bit of the joined at the wrist gimmick.
Yep. This was fun. I really did enjoy this. Went 15 minutes. Like, what I like about this show, at least at this point, it was that every match was about 15, 20 minutes max. None of the matches felt like it overstayed its welcome. This match included, which I really, really, really did enjoy. This one was a lot of fun. Statlander hooks the chain in Willow's mouth and wrenched it back. Willow ends up submitting. Chris Statlander wins in 15 minutes on the dot for this Chicago street fight. After the match, Hathaway came out to celebrate with Statlander, and the trainers were checking on Willow. This was honestly great. This was so much fun. Out of all the violent matches that happened in this show, this one was a standout and the best, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think this was better than the main event. That's my hot take. I would sooner say this was an all-time classic and a great wrestling match than I would the main event. Light tubes were used. As I said, the thumbtack spot. Poor Chris Statlander. That is dangerous and scary to a whole new level. Stokely Hathaway came out with a chair that said R.I.P. New Jack, written in ECW font. What's not to love? Come on. Exactly. This was just like the previous, not quite as good, but I would put it on the same level. Like, both of these matches will be on our year-end list. Boris, I think this was a women's wrestling classic, an American classic. Chris Statlander and Willow Nightingale built up a feud for months. They delivered with the blow-off match here. I'm sure they'll have one or two more down the line, but this was the peak. This was the climax of the feud. Great stuff. I'm going another 4.5. Let's go 4.5 Connor Bedards, bro. 4.5 Bedards.
Yep. Well said. After this match, we see Will Ospreay. He's back with Renee Paquette. Ospreay told Pac to find him if he ever wants a rematch, and then he turns his attention to Ricochet, who comes out, approaches him. Ospreay said he's sick of Ricochet sitting backstage and told him to earn his paycheck. Ospreay told Ricochet to talk to Tony Khan, get some wins under his belt, and then he can challenge him for his title.
Ricochet was charming here. He seemed like a cool, cocky heel. Ospreay is a shockingly good promo. None of us knew he had his promo skills in him. I like this segment.
Yep. Kazuchika Okada versus Konosuke Takeshita versus Orange Cassidy versus Mark Briscoe in a 4-way for the AEW Continental Championship. Thoughts on this match, Matthew?
Very good match. It's very fun to see Okada and Takeshita mix it up. They need to have a long feud and a classic match sooner than later. Let's do it. It's just so weird to see Okada in like these 6-man tags and these fatal 4-ways and war games and all these weird random matches. Kazuchika Okada, he's been the star of New Japan, the biggest wrestler in Puroresu for how long, and here he is in a fatal 4-way match on an AEW pay-per-view in September. It's just so strange. It still stands out to me as odd, but a good match overall, like a nice palate cleanser after the wanton chaos and terror that was the previous match.
Exactly. This was well said. I'm going to say the same about Julia, right? Like, it's going to be weird seeing Julia every single week on Tuesday doing random ass sketches and whatever it is that they're going to have her doing. But her presentation so far has been great. We're not here talking about that. We're here talking about AEW All Out regardless. But here's the thing about this match that I really enjoyed. That after this match, you can take any combination of these 4 and have separate matches.
Yeah, that's a really good call, and I'm sure it will happen, and I'm here for all of them. Yeah, Orange versus Okada, let's do it. Briscoe versus Takeshita, hook it to me veins. But yeah, I agree. That's a good observation, big homie.
Okada hits a Rainmaker on Briscoe, then drops kicks Takeshita off the apron. Cassidy rolls Okada into a pin for a 2 count. Okada comes right back with a Rainmaker and pins Cassidy. And that was that. Very good 4-way. Okada, still your AEW International Champion.
Yeah, about right. I didn't expect him to lose this title. And yeah, I think maybe if someone takes it off him, it'll be Takeshita. Probably Okada's going to the C2 and going to win the C2. I would assume. That's my guess. We shall see. But yeah, a very good match overall. I don't know, 3.5 out of 5, 3.5 Duncan Keiths out of 5.
Yep. The next match was for the TBS Championship, and it was Mercedes Moné versus Hikaru Shida. Man, Moné took a literal whooping in this match.
Yeah. So this one started off pretty good and then fell apart badly at the end. And I don't know exactly what happened. If Mercedes got knocked loopy by a kick or something in there, it kind of looked like she did. Who knows?
A hard kick at one point, to the point where Shida and the ref were checking on Moné kind of low key, and Moné rolls outside, and you can tell that she's not all there.
Absolutely. I think, she got, as they used to say, her bell rung pretty bad in this match, and it kind of led it to falling apart. This one and the next one I felt like went a little too long for my tastes. And yeah, sometimes you have a rough night at the office. I don't think it's like a lot of fans, you know how wrestling fans are. A lot of fans have hated Sasha Banks, Mercedes Moné from day one, and are trying to make it seem like it's been a huge waste of money and Mercedes Moné has been terrible and added nothing. I don't think that's true, but I do think this was a bad match, a misfire. It shouldn't have happened on the show, especially because Mercedes has already beaten Hikaru Shida on Dynamite, so they wrestled again, had a worse match that Mercedes wins again, kind of like, where does it leave Shida? Although Shida's going to be fine. She has her fanboys and fangirls too. But yeah, no, this was just a miss. It was just a miss. It happens.
Yeah, exactly. In terms of Moné, I wouldn't say that she's the worst or anything, but she's around. That's all I'm gonna say for now. Moné avoids a move from the top rope, hits the back of Shida's knee. Moné then hits a sloppy version of her moneymaker to get the win. After the match, Camille comes out to celebrate with Moné, who looked back at Shida and told her that she was lucky she got to face her. That was that. All right, here we go for the AEW World Championship. Bryan Danielson versus TNT champion Jack Perry.
Yeah, they really put Jack Perry over hard here. He kicked out of a lot of things from Bryan Danielson. Almost had the world title won. If old Bryce Remsburg was quicker on the draw, maybe Jack Perry would be the world champion right now. They can tell that story. But yeah, this went 27 minutes and 35 seconds, according to Wikipedia.com. A little too long for my taste. You knew it was going to be a very good match that Bryan Danielson won, and that's exactly what it was.
Yep, exactly. We saw the Young Bucks come out. We saw the BCC come out. We saw a bunch of stuff happening. Danielson grabs Perry's hands and he stomps. He does that stomp, the head stomp. Danielson then backs into the corner. Perry gets to his knees. He does the crucifix pose. Danielson hits him with the big knee. gets the win to retain the AEW Championship. All right, let's talk about this, Matt. After the match, Danielson celebrates while the fans were singing. Killswitch entered the ring behind Danielson and then headbutted him. Killswitch turned and looked at Perry while the broadcast team recalled their former partnership. Then we see Christian Cage come out and he's ready to cash in. All right. Moxley shows up, blocked their path. Danielson was shown smiling inside the ring. Claudio Castagnoli, Pac, and Wheeler Yuta also showed up, and they stand with Moxley. Cage, Killswitch, and the Waynes head to the back. Danielson stands in the middle of the ring, and we get all the yes chants. Moxley goes into the ring, hugs Danielson, kisses him on the forehead. How poetic. Moxley stood by while Castagnoli, Yuta, and Pac raised arms with Danielson. That's when Castagnoli hits him with an uppercut, which is very interesting because Danielson didn't really sell the uppercut. He kind of sold it like, you just punched me. Oh my God. And then that's when Jon Moxley, from behind, puts a bag over his head and tries to murder the man as Wheeler Yuta is being held back.
Yeah, so a couple things of note here. As you said, Boris, Bryan Danielson did not sell the pain of the uppercut. He sold the shock of Claudio hitting him. He fell down to his arse and from a seated position just stood there like wide-eyed, mouth agape, just going like, what? And then that allowed Jon Moxley to pull out a plastic bag and attempt to smother Bryan Danielson to death as the crowd chants, "This is murder," which made me laugh. Also, it was pretty funny. Pac holding back Wheeler Yuta with basically one arm. Like, it didn't seem like it took Pac much effort to stop Wheeler Yuta from his hero and mentor being murdered in front of his eyes. So that made me laugh. The plastic bag in wrestling has been done before. 1989 Clash of the Champions. It got WCW in a whole lot of trouble, but Terry Funk used a plastic bag on Ric Flair to set up their legendary I Quit match, which happened in November, I believe, of that year. So yeah, man, it was like not like we haven't seen the plastic bag in wrestling before, but hey, I can go without attempted murder on my wrestling show. I'm sure it's been done many other times other than that one Funk and Flair thing. But like, yeah, this was a little too silly, a little too far for me.
Yeah, for me, it's wrestling. There's a sense of reality with wrestling. So doing this stuff is a little worse than, seeing a plastic bag like on Law and Order or The Sopranos or something like that. Because, we always talk about wrestling. We always pretend that it's real. So the fact that someone literally tried to commit a murder is a little interesting. The only reason that I'm like, okay, whatever with it is it's a pay-per-view. They already said that they're not going to be able to show this on TV for obvious reasons. So that's that. I thought it was okay. We could have lived without it in the grand scheme of stuff. They could have done so many other things, but it is what it is. The other observation that I had as all this was happening was, did AEW blow their yearly budget that they couldn't afford a stretcher?
That is a good point. Yeah, you'd think they would pull out some kind of gurney, some kind of harness for this man to be strapped on, seeing as he almost died. They did get the oxygen tank out for him, which was nice. I loved Moxley's performance in this because Moxley had like the cold, vacant, psychopath stare. He wasn't screaming. He wasn't angry. He was on another planet just doing his job, doing what he had to do. And I actually did like Moxley's performance in this. I still don't know if I would have done the plastic bag spot. I think we could have left that in the 80s, in the southern indies of the 60s and 70s. I'm sure they were doing all kinds of crazy stuff like this to get heat. But in 2024, I don't think we needed it. I don't think it's going to really help. But hey, people have been talking about it, so I guess it did its job.
Yep. We'll see. Or here's my question to you, Matt. Are people going to remember the betrayal or the plastic bag?
Well, that's a really good question, man. I think they're going to remember the plastic bag, and for the wrong reasons. Like, they're going to remember it as kind of silly and off-putting. But maybe that's just wrestling fans. It's not like they're going to stop watching because of it. You know
Exactly.
what I mean? I don't think anybody is put off by this that much. But you could argue that like it's too violent for some people. It's too silly for some people. And doing this kind of stuff over and over is going to restrict them to a certain level. Like I understand that argument for sure. So yeah, overall, I did think this was still a good match. Maybe knock a star or a half a star off for the attempted asphyxiation and murder at the end of it. Let's go. Yeah, let's go 3 Mike Ditkas out of 5. Out of a possible 5 Ditkas, we're gonna go 3 Ditkas.
All right, main event time. An unsanctioned, lights out steel cage match with an AEW referee in there. Swerve Strickland with Prince Nana versus Hangman Adam Page.
Super violent, really gross. Probably not quite as violent and shocking as their death match was, but it was just kind of like they did most of the same spots as the death match, and they also upped the ante a little bit with a syringe, which is like CZW, really like carny. I think we've seen it in GCW as well, but yeah, the syringe grosses me out.
For many reasons, like, there's many reasons why, but anyways, so again, like you said it, right, this was a very violent match, very similar to a lot of their other matches, so they kind of felt like they needed to up the ante, and that was the problem, because remember back whenever it was, and they had that Texas death match, everyone that night was talking, and I'm pretty sure I even said it on the after party, where and what are they going to do next, because that was the first match of this feud, and here we are, using syringes.
Yeah, that was to correct you just slightly, I believe it was the second match, because Wrestle Dream was the first match. It was like the sneaky classic, and then they came back with that absolutely insane match, right? The second time, which you're totally valid. That's an excellent point. What will they do to top it? So then they had a third match on Dynamite, which went to a 30-minute draw, and though they used tables and it was pretty wacky, it seemed like a step back, and they were kind of going back to basics, back to wrestling. And then they booked this cage match, and it was like, uh-oh, where is this going? And the answer was, yeah, they tried to up the ante of violence from the second match, and that led to like more gross, I don't want to say eye rolling, because I felt the storyline was definitely great leading up to this match. But yeah, to me, it was just kind of like it was just like the previous. It was kind of a step too far. It was, I don't know. It was closer to CZW garbage wrestling to me than it was to like a good hardcore match.
My whole thing here is that Adam Page had the match won by the point that he used the syringe. That whole sequence didn't need to happen because Swerve Strickland was done. So this is what happened. Page powerbombed Swerve from the top rope. Then Page hits the Deadeye for a near fall. He jabbed the side of a chair into Swerve's head twice and jawed at him. Swerve got to his knees and was laughing. Swerve stood up and then he just falls down. That's when Page pulls the grill out of Swerve's mouth, threw it on the mat, gets to the black bag, pulls out a needle, the syringe. He jabs it into the inside of Swerve's mouth. Page slams a chair over the head of Swerve that completely knocks him out. Page wins in 31 minutes, 30 seconds. So for me, I think the better outcome of this match would have been if Swerve Strickland takes his ass kicking, gets up, laughs, but just falls because he's in so much pain. I think that, to me, would have been a much cooler visual and a much better story moving forward than, a second or third or fourth or fifth broken law in this show.
I know what
NXT?
you're saying. Yeah, right. It's NXT 2.0 with horrible crimes happening every single second. I like the actual final visual of this show where Hangman Page is going up the ramp. He walks back to the ring, and fans start screaming. There's a woman shrieking in the audience, like, please don't go back. And then Hangman Page actually stops himself. He doesn't go back into the ring. And it kind of seems like he realizes how far he's gone, how he's completely lost himself, lost his mind, turning so bad, turning so dark, torturing this man, Swerve Strickland. And I liked how it ended. But yeah, like the syringe was just a whatever. I don't think we needed it. Were they suggesting that he like drugged Swerve at the end there, or was it just like an empty needle? It was just a torture device. Who knows? The finish of this match was like a knockout. He didn't even pin him. He just knocked him out via huge chair shot. I imagine the chair was gimmicked, and they did like a big camera cut into a wide shot as soon as Swerve was hit by the chair. So I don't know. I feel like that was a quote unquote fake chair, but yeah, man, it was an interesting match. I don't know. Would you call it a great match overall? Would you?
I would call it a good match, not great.
Yeah, I think, yeah. I just like, because we've already seen them go to such a level of violence that they tried to top it. And I feel like they just kind of got gross with it rather than topping it, So yeah, tough one to rate. Let's call it 3.5. Who's the grossest athlete in Chicago history? 3.5 Jay Cutlers out of 5, Boris. Yeah, man, I don't know. It was interesting. Like the final visual of the show with Hangman Page basically looking at his hands like Bob Backlund. Like, what have I done? What have I become? My sweetest friend. I did like the last shot of the show, and I did really like the show overall. I thought we had 2 all-time classic matches. I thought it was a great wrestling show, but geez, syringes, guys, nah, we didn't need that.
Yep. Agreed with you. I think the only match that for me that really didn't connect was the TBS championship match. Outside of that, everything else was, good to great, which is all you can ask for. And I was thoroughly sports entertained. So overall, I would give this match or this show a thumbs up. How about you?
Same, a total agreement. The only thing you could say that wasn't good was the TBS thing. Your stomach may vary, your queasiness factor might be through the roof in that main event. There was also like some really gross spots on a cinder block, which looked pretty real. It might have been a slightly gimmicked cinder block, perhaps not one off the street, one made of something else, but like it did not break when Swerve was power bombed on it, when Hangman Page was vertebrated on a cinder block but only caught the edge. It really scraped his back up bad. Like, violent match, a violent end to a violent show.
Yep. Alrighty there. All right, let's take it to the Facebook group. Just remember facebook.com and search for A Plus Productions. That's EH Plus Productions, and you can join in on all the fun as we chat as the wrestling shows are going on. And it's always fun to take part as with other wrestling fans, because like I mentioned here on A Plus Wrestling, it's all about opinions, and we get those opinions here. All right, here are some comments. Rick Lutek said, definitely thought some of All Out 24 matches were edgy, risk-taking, gritty, and hardcore. Not a lot of holding back. Seems the push is on for some of the wrestlers to hit that next level. While not so well known for creating great storylines, does seem that some of the opponents can be facing each other a couple more times. Now that Blackpool has turned on Danielson, he now has 3 main opponents that he can face in the next while. Now, if only AEW and TNT can find ways to improve their production levels.
Yeah, a couple production gaffes, a couple weird sound errors, but that doesn't bug me too much, honestly. I understand if it does bug you. Great comment there by Rick. No notes. I think AEW does unfairly get maligned for their storylines, because some of their storylines are really good. Swerve and Hangman for the last couple months has been awesome. Tony Storm and Mariah May it was great. It was the best story in wrestling when it went on, but they also do things like the plastic bag and the syringe and stuff. So I feel like the bad stuff stands out and maybe clouds the good stuff that does actually occur on AEW.
Exactly. Admiral Jane said, gross ending. TK booking is terrible. And this is kind of where those opinions come. Some people just don't want that stuff in mainstream wrestling, and I totally understand that and respect that, right? There's a place for everything, right? If you want that extreme violence, go watch some CZW or some GCW, right? Is mainstream AEW wrestling the place for this type of stuff? Thoughts, Matt?
Well, I do feel like for the most part, they do a good job of restricting it to like the non-sanctioned matches. Like, they don't really necessarily shock you with it. They make you, they try to warn you that it's coming. Having said that, Boris, there was an attempted murder in the world title match this time around. So yeah, that I can see why that's a problem. I think it's fine as long as they stick to the matches where they tell you it's going to be really violent beforehand. You know what I mean? Like in a non-sanctioned cage match between two guys who hate each other like Swerve and Hangman do, I understand it. The Jungle Boy versus Bryan Danielson ending in a bag choking is a little much, and I can understand why that would turn off a lot of viewers.
Yep. Bob Kapoor from Slam Wrestling says, regarding the plastic bag spot, Funk and Flair did it better, though that could be said about pretty much everything on the show.
That's a fun line. No argument there, Mr. Kapoor.
Paul Yorkie said, so the theme of last night's pay-per-view was murder, right?
It even got chanted by the fans. Yeah, the commenters are on it. Yes, indeed it was. The theme was, if you wanted to be a dick, perhaps you could say pretty apt for Chicago.
Right? Michael Barak says, look like an overbooked hat on a hot mess. Which, again, it really varies for some people. Some people really got turned off by certain stuff. So, but that's wrestling. Wrestling is for everyone. Yeah. A little bit of something for everyone's taste.
It certainly wasn't like an NWA St. Louis 1970s show. There was a lot going on. There were a couple hats on top of hats. I don't think it was an overbooked mess though, but it did get a little messy at the end there.
Jake Alinar said people complained during the PG era about how lame and childish it was. I think he may have meant tame. We're going to go with lame because that's what he's put. Now people are complaining about the violence. Can't please all the people all the time. I personally loved it being there live.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome that Jake was there live. Correspondent in Chicago. Sorry about that murder joke I just made. But no, I do think there is a middle ground though, right? We don't have to go back to 1993, 1995. Plumbers fighting hockey players. We don't necessarily need to do that, but at the same time, we don't have to go all the way to cinder blocks and syringes, right? Like there is a middle ground, and I feel like that's what a lot of fans want. This was too extreme. This was too violent for a lot of people.
Yep. Times change, right? Times change. Your taste change. Remember, a lot of us watched ECW when we were angst-teens listening to metal. I'm just now an angst emo adult who listens to metal. Who's
My Chemical Boris
in a couple weeks?
Oh, nice, Boris. You got the life, you might say. Hey, ayo, corn song. Let's go. Well, while you're falling away from me, I will. Yeah, final thoughts on this show, man. I thought it was good. I generally have a pretty big stomach for pro wrestling violence. The deathmatch stuff is a little too far for me, and some of this veered into deathmatch. Bro, Chris Statlander with the fucking booty thumbtacks, like the syringe, the cinder blocks, the bag. It was a whole lot of violence on this show. So I will remember this as the most violent AEW show. And I would struggle. I bet you can't find an ECW pay-per-view, a mainstream pay-per-view that was as violent as this.
Agreed. Overall, my last thoughts on this show is I echo a lot of your sentiments, man. I think that this is the most violent show that they had. I also think, like you said earlier, there is a middle ground that they can find. If they do this once every 2 years, once every 3 years, I'm fine with that. This cannot be turning into a regular thing for AEW because, like I said, as the page turns for AEW, this is a very important time for AEW. With their TV deal being finalized, securing some coin from the network. And now let's put the focus on the product and let's get the product and the fans back into the arena and the fans backing AEW because let's be honest, wrestling is so much better with AEW around.
1,000,000%. Inarguably so, the industry has been way healthier in the last 5 years with AEW present. Yeah, man, once every 2 or 3 years. And then when you do come to the show where you do something super violent, don't do 4 or 5 different shockingly violent things up and down the card. Do one really violent thing and it will land way better. It will stick in our hearts and souls more.
All right, so that is that. Matt, I think this is a perfect time to call it an episode. aplusproductions.com. That's ehplusproductions.com, where you can find all of the news and ways to subscribe and all that fun stuff. We have 3 feeds: A Plus Wrestling, A Plus Entertainment, and A Plus Sports, and you choose what feed you want to listen to, and you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. The wrestling show feed has a little issue. I'm going to figure this out, but go to aplusproductions.com and you can find ways to subscribe. You can find the URLs to put into your favorite app and all that fun stuff. Again, thank you so much for listening. Facebook.com and search for the group A Plus Productions and join in on the conversation. We're going to be having so much more fun over the next few weeks. And I think next week we're going to go to the regular format of this show, which is more of a, quote unquote traditional show that we're going to be doing here. But we're going to be changing things up. We're going to be having fun. We're going to be having guests. We're going to be having roundtables. Like I say, A Plus Wrestling is where your opinions are heard, because wrestling is just so beautifully subjective.
We want tables, clap, 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 of the round variety. Yeah, man, very excited, very proud to be part of the team. Fun show and fun talking to you, buddy. Now let's go back to watch even more football.
He's Matt, I'm Boris, and on behalf of the entire A Plus Productions crew, thank you so much for listening, but most importantly, stay tranquilo.
Catch a vibe, catch a foot when I drive. Big pressure, I'm